Welcome to the Inspired Action Podcast. This is where we have motivational, inspiring conversations and interviews that we hope you'll enjoy listening to.
Join us and other inspired actioneers on this alchemical, transformational journey.
Welcome back to the Inspired Action Podcast. I'm Jay, and this is our 105th episode of the Inspired Action Podcast, 105. And I'm here with Lita Herman, the co-host with the most. As always.
As always. Welcome back. Hey, you have the most.
Most what?
I don't know. Humor. How about humor? Brilliant.
You're the funny one. Oh, wait. I'm the brilliant one. Who's the brilliant one? Who's on third? What's on second?
Welcome back, everyone. It's so great to have you join us again today. And we're eager to continue our topic from last time on the magic of the heart and healing heart pains. And we're taking today the earth element perspective.
Yes, so we're entering the earth realm, the realm of the mind. So today's episode is going to be much more thoughtful or thought-orientated. We're going to dig deeper in that dirt today of earth.
Yes, the earth dirt. I love it.
They love the dirt too. So today we're in the middle of the 5-episode mini-series on how each of the elements responds differently to trauma and negative life events. Our last episode, 104, is on fire. And today we're going to discuss earth and what you can do to release what we call tentacles wrapped around your heart.
And those tentacles represent the heart pain you have and how it's really changed how you interact with the world.
And Lita, before we begin, I remember the update early, so we don't have to start the podcast, then do the update. So let's do that now before we get into the center of the earth. Right?
Right.
Which, by the way, depending on when you listen to this is February 2023. I just read that the Earth center core has either stopped spinning or is about to stop spinning and could reverse directions. Like, what the F?
I don't even know what you're talking about.
You want me to explain this one?
Yes.
Okay, so Earth. So I bring it up because it's about Earth.
Yes.
So I'm meaning literal here. Doesn't sound like a good thing, though, does it?
No.
All right, so I guess they've been studying this for a while, and they're kind of like spoon feeding us like a little bit, right? But the Earth's core has been slowing since 2009, and now they think it's stopped or it's about to stop, and then it's going to reverse. So, you think that's bad?
Yeah.
Sounds a little bad, right?
Sounds bad.
So I did what every responsible lazy person does these days, and I Googled it. Like someone wrote, like, what can I read about this, right? So let's find out. Is it bad?
Is it?
Yes.
Okay.
So it's like a Earth person having a really, really bad day, right?
Right.
So someone wrote on this long thread of the Earth's core stopping to rotating, what would happen if the Earth stopped spinning for 42 seconds? Of course, they picked 42, right? The answer to all
to the universe.
Right? Wink, wink to all those hitchhiker fans out there. So this is what they wrote, and I'm reading it verbatim. If the planet were come to an abrupt halt, the angular momentum imparted to the air, water, even rocks along the equator would keep moving at the speed of 1,100 miles per hour. The movement would scour the surface while ripping it apart and shedding shards into the upper regions of the atmosphere and outer space.
Okay, that's a really bad Earth day.
But wait. I have more since I quickly went down the rabbit hole of information, right? I was already spending way too much time on this, and like no one else was even talking about this. Like no one had even mentioned it.
Oh my God. It's not the water cooler moment about the Earth's core stopping the spin and reversing. Like people aren't, I'm shocked everyone isn't talking about this.
Science nerd, I get it. I know that. But so I went back to the people reporting the core story. Do you want me to keep going on this?
Yes.
Okay.
I don't know. I mean, is it a happy story?
I don't know.
Is it joyful?
Well, I'm not sure I would say that.
Why would you want to read this to us?
Because it's about Earth and it's kind of funny. It's just the way that my reading went on this. All right. So I'll go one more thing, just one more last thing before we get back to our regularly scheduled Earth talk.
Yes, there we go. Regularly scheduled.
Okay. So, and I promise I won't go down the rabbit hole too much further, but I really did spend like a couple hours. So I kind of want to talk about it.
Okay.
You know? Oh, so this is what the Earth's...
Just the anticipation is killing us.
I know. Oh, don't say that.
Right.
Okay. It could be the Earth's core that's killing us. But, okay. So here's what the scientists said about the Earth's core rotation thingy. And again, I'm reading this from
some random...
the interweb, right? Okay. And remember, I kind of read fast, so I'm slow this down if you have to. The results could help shine light on the many mysteries of deep Earth, including what part of the inner core plays in maintaining the Earth's magnetic field and affecting the speed of the whole planet's rotation. Sounds important, right?
Yeah.
Okay. And then the scientist says, I keep thinking we're on the verge of figuring this out, says, I'm not going to say his name, blank, 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 seismologist of the University of Southern California, but I'm not sure.
Okay.
All right. Did you get that last part? The scientist who's working on this says, I'm not sure if they're on the verge of figuring this out. It's like, when are you going to get this figured out? I'm having like these Titanic floating vote on the door moments. Like, when? Not enough lifeboats, not enough binoculars. Okay. Hello. Where are the binoculars that look inside the Earth, Lita?
Yes.
And then wait, I got the last thing the scientist says.
Okay.
We just have to wait.
until the Earth falls off its axis.
I'm like, that's the last sentence in the article. We just have to wait. I'm like, what? Wait for what? Who says that?
I'm sure someone smarter than us is working on this, Jay.
I hope so. I don't think we have any interstellar lifeboats waiting for all of us to leave the planet. Actually, if we do, I'm certain we don't have enough.
So that goes back to our episode 104, where we talked entirely about the Titanic and not having enough lifeboats.
No.
But wait. We is the U.S. Space Force going to help us with this?
Now Luke is being funny.
Those are
right?
Well, clearly there's not enough lifeboats for us.
We just have to keep the core moving or accept it as moving in another direction.
Yeah, without flying off the surface of the planet.
I know, right?
What's gonna
Sending
happen?
shards.
Yeah.
So my whole point was, this is why we need the earth element.
Yes.
They are the center of all the elements, okay?
Yes.
I'm just saying, no good, no bad, no right or wrong. It's just what they do. So we have to pay attention to the earths because they are so important.
And really, we're all spinning around them. They are the center core for all of us, like our families and our friendships.
So if the earth element's core is not spinning or spinning too much, we need the gravity of the divine.
Yeah.
How's that? We need them to be in harmony.
Wonderful. And on that note,
sorry I went off on that, but I was like,
great. This is great. The Earths are going to love it. All right. So if you're new to the podcast, we recommend you go back to the beginning and start with the basics.
You mean if you're new to this podcast and you ever tune into another one after this one?
After this intro. All right. Well, in this case, for today's episode, if you don't know much about the 5 elements, go back to pod 2, which introduces the 5 elements, and pod 12 through 16, which describes each of them. And maybe what we're talking about will make a little more sense to you.
And that pod 2, that's a long time ago. That's like 100 and...
Yeah.
What? A lot.
A
100
lot.
and a lot.
Too much math for you there.
Oh my God. Jay. I'm still focusing on the Earth's core and stopping. But anyways, those episodes will give you everything you need to understand to get started with the understanding the 5 elements. At least I think so. But guess what, Lita? I'm not sure. We'll have to wait and see.
We'll have to wait and see. And if, like us, you love the 5 elements, we want to introduce you to the Alchemy Learning Center, which is our online classes website. And we have a basic class on the 5 elements.
And guess what we called it? I said it last time.
What?
Called Understanding the 5 Elements.
How original and brilliant. All right. And we have CEUs that are available for most of our classes. And so you can just go because you're interested, or if you're a practitioner of some sort, you might be able to take advantage of those.
Sure. So that's alchemylearningcenter.com.
And we also have some books on the 5 elements. If you're new to the 5 elements, you can read an old-fashioned paper copy of a book.
Or you could step into the future, listen to audiobooks, because we are now
an audio
producer of books.
Yes.
I don't know. We have books. We have something in Audible.
We have
iTunes.
Kindle books. We have Kindle books as well, online Kindle books. And we have a single audiobook, which we're very proud of. And we hope to have more in the future. It's called Through the Mystery Gate. And the Kindle books are Connecting Your Circle and the energy of
That's
love.
fantastic. So, all right, we have audio, Kindle, whatever, hard copy carried around. We would love to see you actually sitting on a bench reading one of our books.
Yes. So let's get back to our earth conversation,
Yes,
Jay.
no more spinning cores, I promise.
Okay.
Or maybe I don't know, it might come up.
It might come up.
You never know.
Knowing Jay, she's got another joke in there. All right. So we're talking about these tentacles that can wrap around your heart and cause heart pains, and specifically how that happens to earth element people.
Yes, we like to liken those tentacles to the 7 deadly sins because they really match up well. And they are, Lita?
Overindulgence, temptation, greed, jealousy, ego or pride, you can call it, deep-seated anger, and apathy.
And then we added an 8th tentacle. The bonus tentacle for everyone is
fear, because sometimes you can get frozen in fear or it can be like debilitating.
Sure, but it can be good in a good way. Fear can be good in a good way.
If it's helping you be safe, but it's not always like that. You can really be completely unable to do anything, in which case it's a tentacle.
Right. I got you.
So for today, before we talk about healing the tentacles, let's talk about how Earth generally deals with heart pains.
Yeah, so let's go, Lita. Let's start.
Okay, so while any elemental type can be dealing with any one of these 8 tentacles, the earth element is more likely going to see the world with the lens of their earth element, which means they're going to look at the world a specific way. And that's why naming these tentacles are so important.
Yes, and also, Lita, I would like to have everyone who's listening, all the inspired actioneers, if you're more than one element, so even if you have an earth 2nd or 3rd in your stack up, or you just want to study good earth, their habits and this great little thing that we always talk about, this episode can apply to your 3rd position. The 3rd element can even be the element that's going to give you the most heart pains.
Yes, it doesn't always happen that way, but it can. And we just want to make sure everyone, understands that you don't have to be earth first to get a lot out of this podcast.
Right. I hear you.
So
let's go.
Yeah. So I'd say that the reason we started giving these names to these quote unquote tentacles is we realized that there's just common themes and stories for each elemental type. And so we're just naming them so people can begin to unravel those tentacles from their hearts. So if you've got earth anywhere in your top 3, then this is for you. And so earths are going to be more likely than the other elements to have these tentacles: overindulgence, deep-seated anger, and apathy.
And with the occasional bit of jealousy sprinkled on top, like the little jimmies.
Yes, like the fire element.
So if your core's not rotating,
yes,
or is going to stop in reverse rotation, then here we go.
All right. So you might even call it envy in the sense of earth.
Yes.
So we'll explain that later. So let's go over the first one.
Overindulgence.
All right. So
I went over the top.
Yes.
Overindulgence.
So earths love to eat, and many also love cooking for people. And they often have dinner parties. But sometimes they have tentacles that kind of mess with their appetite. For example, they might have some kind of overindulgence. They might even be bulimic, or they might have anorexia.
Yeah.
And the question is, why? Why particularly is that an earth issue?
I do see that a lot.
Yeah. And so any element can have an eating disorder. We're not trying to say earth is the only one. But in particular, if you have earth in your top 3, there's a feeling of lack maybe in your life. And that earth element, might want to really just fit in. They're all about belonging. So if there's peer pressure in any way, like a sense that they have to be like everyone else, especially when sharing food, that can maybe cause some trouble.
And everything about eating relates to earth because the earth element is related to the stomach and the digestive system and generally like the pancreas.
Yes, which we group the pancreas with the spleen, and we just call it the spleen. But really, it's really about digestion in general for earth.
So Lita, explain the 2 types of earths.
Okay, so there's the stomach type of earths, and they tend to be taller and thinner and naturally want to eat less and maybe even have trouble with their appetite than maybe the average person. And they don't have as strong an appetite because they're focused on their digestion. And it doesn't feel good when your digestive system gets overwhelmed with too much food all at once.
Yeah, I get that. And what about the spleen type? Can you explain it?
Right, I'll explain it. The spleen type is perhaps a bit more interested in food and perhaps eating more of it because the spleen is in charge of transforming the food into energy and fluids for the rest of the body. So they have a very strong digestive ability and can maybe even eat more and therefore maybe be hungrier faster than other people.
Like a fast metabolism?
Yes, but if that becomes overwhelmed with overeating because of a tentacle wrapped around the heart. And let's say someone has a feeling of lack in their lives and they're literally trying to fill themselves up with food, which can happen to earth people, then that can result in them beginning to be overweight because the metabolism can't keep up.
Yeah, which also could result in an eating disorder, maybe emotional eating, if you have it somewhere, maybe even third, or just a lifetime of trying to diet and not succeeding.
Yeah, and compare that to the stomach type of person, which we mentioned before. That tentacle, again, it maybe instead of trying to fill up, maybe they're going to become overly controlling about their food and their diet. And that's that more anorexia type of eating disorder.
Yeah, that control issue are normally more associated with ego pride tentacle. But in this case, when we're talking about earth, the control is still based on that feeling of lack and denying that feeling. So that can be a slippery slope because it's not like you have to control everything in your life, like we talked about maybe in the wood or the fire. It's more that your way of dealing with the feeling of lack is to go into extreme denial.
Yeah, then it's like you don't feel the lack if you're denied. It's a funny way to go about it, but that's what happens. So now remember, if you're earth, food is going to play this important part in your life, whether it's positive or negative. And if it's negative, then perhaps that's a tentacle, because we believe that earths are more likely to love food, whether they have a small or big appetite.
Yeah, so I totally agree with that. And I have been to dinner parties with earth people, and sometimes they don't eat at all. They eat
Mhm.
very little, and sometimes they're like just packing it away. So I guess it's dependent on who you are and what you're working on. So
Right.
all right, let's go on to our next tentacle, deep-seated anger, and that has a very particular flavor for earth.
Like a food analogy here. Yes, a different flavor. So it's much more aligned with, I think the word resentment would go really well here. It comes from long-standing negative situations where an earth person might feel stuck or denied or even abused in some way.
Yeah, I think it could be as simple as anger and resentment about a health concern.
Yes, one of my clients was very angry about the fact that she followed standard nutritional advice for many years, and then suddenly the advice changed. And the staple of her diet was suddenly everyone said, "Oh, you can't eat that anymore. It's off limits." So then she thought everything that was physically wrong with her was now due to having followed that bad advice. And she was furious with the media for giving her that bad advice in the first place. And she felt like she'd been duped.
I think duped is a word I often hear when we start to unravel when I'm working with an earth person, because that's a big word for them. They don't like to be duped.
No, they like truth.
Yes.
And, it could be the result of a traumatic event. Like maybe someone has a baby, right? And their spouse goes back to work. And so this person is left to care for the baby. And maybe they even wanted to do that. I mean, an earth person would love to do that in many respects. But just before the baby came, the spouse got you to move away from where all your support is because the spouse wanted to be closer to work. So you're in a new place, maybe, and there's no one and no support. So, for the first 6 months, we know how hard it is to raise a baby from,
Or multiple children.
yeah. So now there's total exhaustion and loneliness on top of it. And then the exhaustion starts causing health issues. And before you know it, 10 years has gone by and you're still very angry at your spouse for taking you away from your support system.
And you know what happens, right?
What?
The core stops rotating.
Yes, yes, that's it. So it wouldn't have been a tentacle for sure if it had just happened in general, because earth people, they love to raise children and often they don't mind sacrificing something for them. But let's say the spouse really started working late and not helping at all with the baby when they got home and just generally being absent. Now you've got a situation of full-blown resentment. And while resentment can be pretty mild, it could become a tentacle, especially if there's a past history of trauma that might be related that's already in
So you
place.
can see the cause of these tentacles could just be about anything. The question is, how deep is that anger or that resentment? And is it causing the heart to not be free?
Right. And anger comes out all the time for Earths in ways that are not exactly nice. Now, remember, Earths are really, really nice people, but they can really speak quite frankly about what's not working for them when they get into this state, which is good, but it may result in some consequences. Children disliking them maybe because they're using strong language with their, teenagers or adult children. Or maybe it results in divorce from that, spouse that you need to explain why you have this resentment on a constant basis. Maybe the spouse is really MIA, but it also might be, that you don't really want the divorce. But again, this deep seated anger is really fueling a lot of these negative
And it can
conversations.
go on for a while, a lot of thinking and processing. And so you mentioned apathy. What's that about? How does that fit into the next piece of the puzzle?
So far, we haven't talked about apathy because we started with wood and fire, which are both yang elemental types. And what that means is they are less likely than the other types to sit back and do nothing. They're more likely to take some kind of action because they're yang, even when they have tentacles. But Earth is exactly in the middle of yin and yang. So it has some yang aspects, and it's like being able to speak frankly when they're annoyed, which we were just talking about. Or they could also be more yin in nature, like going along with whatever the others are doing, being accommodating and agreeable in general, and putting the needs of others, like family members or their community, ahead of their own needs.
So listening to that, I would think the apathy as a tentacle in this case could be more extreme version of putting others' needs ahead of their own. Is that correct?
Yes.
They may have learned from trauma that they just don't matter at all, which is different than the water mattering,
Yeah.
wanting to matter. And they just go along with others just to stay safe.
Yes.
They don't want to rock the boat, so to speak, or
Yes.
cause a rift.
Yep.
They just want everything to keep going the way it is.
This is particularly true with people who have had an abusive parent or just a really negative, opinionated parent. Earths can learn to try to make themselves really small and to avoid conflict at all costs.
Yeah, I think they might spend more time in nature to get away from their parents in that case that you just gave. Or maybe if they're home, speak very little, maybe like hide in the closet, maybe not like a Harry Potter closet, but like another closet. They can come out from under the
It could
stairs.
be a
But maybe,
Harry
that's
Potter
right.
closet.
Might
That would be
how-
perfect.
That's right? Wherever they can do to get away in a maybe quieter, subtler way.
Yes. And again, another more young child, like a wood or fire child, in the same exact situation might be combative and outspoken. And even an earth person might, because they are equal yin and yang, they might be like that. But they also may take the other side. It's also possible that they choose that apathy route.
Yeah, I think that's kind of common until they really get to work on those tentacles. And then we see them, once they get going on figuring it out, starting to release it, they really get into clearing it all out. So that's a positive thing if you're earth and you're like, this is a lot. Just remember, you got to start somewhere and be kind and gentle and self-love,
Yeah.
right? Got to feel the self-love. And so finally, let's talk about jealousy, which I think is not totally an earth tentacle. Obviously, it can be all of them, but sometimes I think for this one, it might go towards envious.
Yes. It's not just jealous about another person, someone who's, taking away your lover or something like that. It goes more with anger and resentment in those cases. But sometimes Earths feel like they've been wronged somehow. And now they see others who haven't been wronged or have it better than them. And it becomes a bit of jealousy. Like one of my clients who had some money stolen, a lot of money, then they were upset, that their friends could afford the things she couldn't afford. And that jealousy really went along with the anger.
So that's the envious.
Yes.
Yeah.
So it really had more to do with lack and the loss of the money than it was a need to control the situation, which is really when we see the deep-seated anger.
So let's talk about that. How do the earth elements, remember if you have it 1, 2, or 3, or just studying earth element in general, what about that tentacle? How do they go about healing themselves from that?
So the first step, like we said, is name the tentacles that you have, watch them. Now, for Earth, you go into problem solving mode.
But that isn't the problem itself, Lita, because they are probably already stuck in the problem solving mode. Remember, going around and around, which is their strength. It's one of their superpowers, trying to solve problems related to the tentacles. Like if they have this deep seated anger that you're talking about, they probably are trying to control the situation to fix what's causing them to be angry, maybe from an outside perspective.
That's a really good point. So, the first step is acknowledging that the problem isn't outside of you, that these outer circumstances are happening, but inside, it's time to look at yourself and why you're being so triggered.
Yeah. So first ask yourself, what are the triggers? Like, for example, are you feeling fearful, guilty, lonely, annoyed? Do you feel like someone duped you? Or maybe that envious we talked about. What is bringing out that tentacle behaviors, those triggers?
Yes, like let's say you've had a history of overeating, but you went to Weight Watchers and you're doing really well on your diet, but suddenly, due to something that happens, you begin to feel tremendously guilty about something. Like one of your kids is saying that you didn't parent them well, and now you feel horrible. And suddenly the eating gets out of hand
So
again.
that's a trigger. And often with Earths, anything going wrong with their kids or family, that inner circle
Yeah.
is likely to be a trigger of some kind.
Yes. So you need to begin to understand what's triggering this tentacle and own it.
And remember, once you become aware of it, you can begin to find the source of the pain to release that tentacle.
Yes. And like we explained in the last two episodes, it's now about once you identified it, what the source of it is, going back through your past and finding the first time that you had a similar pain happen. It could be early childhood, even. And once you identify that, you can begin the healing process.
And we have worked with many people who do this. It just takes time. Sometimes it takes a little longer for Earth people. Sometimes they go super fast. We use the idea of the rewriting the history in your mind, that story. What would it have felt like if something else happened instead of your interpretation at that time, at that moment? How could you rewrite the story?
Right. And then once you figure out a new way to see those events from the experience of your memory, but using your adult self, your current day knowledge of how the world works, you can rewrite that story in a more positive way. I mean, we explained this in the last couple episodes, but you could have it be anything. You could have your mother say the thing you wanted to hear your whole life in this imaginary memory. So once you rewrite that memory in your mind, where it feels really good, like something much better in your mind, you can then pull that new story through your life and begin healing all the other negative stories you've created that are similar to that first episode.
And Lita, we have created a meditation in the alchemylearningcenter.com that you recorded that walks someone through the process. Remember, gentle, kind, self-love. It takes time. And what do we call that meditation?
We call it the Free Your Heart meditation. It's part of the second stage of alchemy meditations that are in the ALC.
That's fantastic. So we've got the main themes for Earth of the tentacles of the heart, the pains that really kind of get to the Earth people that maybe, slow them down, that core rotation. I had to throw that in again. Now remember, for all the other tentacles are still possible for any element. They're just a different flavor. We're just talking about some of the common reactions to trauma or traumatic events for the Earth elements, either 1, 2, or 3.
Right. And really, we want all of the listeners who sincerely want to free their hearts from heart pains to be able to live their best lives. And part of self cultivating, that's the theme of this podcast really is self cultivation. It's a bit about just watching yourself, identifying your triggers, and identifying the behaviors that you are just not in control of because of the tentacles.
Right? And if you have no choice about your behavior, then your heart is not truly free. It's just that simple. Don't overthink it. Don't overprocess it. If you don't have a choice about your behavior, then your heart is not free.
Okay, so then you can ask yourself, do you have a choice? Or are you compelled to do things that are not authentically you, but you do them anyway?
And if that's the case, then spending some time working, examining yourself, then working to heal it, I guarantee, I totally, really, really think it's going to be worth it because having a free heart is amazing.
So It's so much less work when you don't have to work so hard at not being yourself.
Right.
Believe me, it's just easier to be you. You can totally be yourself and not worry about, how you're perceived or protecting yourself. And for Earth, it's especially important to love yourself because once you really do, then you can't really be hurt anymore.
Yeah. So, okay, Earth, that's it for today. Don't worry about the core rotation. It's going to be fine. I don't want you to go down that rabbit hole. We're all going to just stop rotating.
You're causing them to worry.
I know, right? No worry. That's what I'm saying. Like, don't worry. But I want you to take a little time for self-examination. You deserve it. A little navel gazing at this case is perfect. Take the time. Because guess what, Lita? The navel is the center of the Earth person right above the stomach.
True.
Right? Go use the power of your minds to get free. You have beautiful hearts and keep the things rotating. Keep things going.
Yes. And next up, we're going to be doing metal.
Yay. That sounds fantastic. All right. Have a good day.
Bye.
Bye. You've been listening to the Inspired Action Podcast, and you've reached the end. Woohoo. Why not celebrate a little bit and click that subscribe button right there. We love having you with us on this journey, and we want it to continue.
You can also rate and review this podcast. And if you have already, thank you so much. We read all reviews, and your reviews help other people find this podcast as well. You can also be a part of this podcast yourself by submitting a voice recording message and emailing it to us at lita@inspiredactionpodcast.com or jay@inspiredactionpodcast.com.
And if you want, you can join our Facebook group or follow us on Instagram.
Join us next week for another Inspired Action conversation. And thank you for listening.
Thanks for listening, and remember to hug the dog.